Hi, I'm Michelle Segrest, and welcome to the Factory of the Future podcast.
This podcast is inspired by my 3-volume book series on the evolution of modern manufacturing. Each episode features engaging conversations with game-changing experts discussing the processes and innovations that are changing the landscape of modern manufacturing. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes, and take just a couple of seconds to leave a review. And then go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss a single episode. Today, I'm really happy to welcome Frantisek Riha-Scott, Design Director of Confitex Technology. Frantisek is based in Hong Kong and is responsible for overseeing development of the company's patented textile innovations and manufacturing of the company's range of absorbent underwear and nursing pads, marketed under the Confitex for Men and Just In Case brands. Through extensive research and development, backed by rigorous laboratory and consumer testing, the company has created a revolutionary multi-layered textile that provides unrivaled absorbency and leak-proof performance. Since 2015, Frantisek has been based in China and Hong Kong in order to spearhead the absorbent apparel company's product development and manufacturing, having selected China over other locations because it offered superior accessibility to specialist textile technology and a highly skilled workforce. He spent 3 years living on site at the production facility, training staff in the entirely new processes required to produce the company's patented absorbent and waterproof textile technology. In this episode, we're going to dispel some of the myths about manufacturing in China. We're also going to have our guest explain how he builds innovation and creativity with meticulous construction techniques and exacting quality control at Confitex's state-of-the-art facility. I'm really excited to get started. So, Frantisek, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We have a really interesting conversation today. I'm so excited about it. So let's get right to it. I want to start out by asking you to just give us a little information about your background and tell us why you're an expert in manufacturing.
I'm the design director and founder of Confitex. I oversee the product development, our textile technology innovation, product design, and the manufacturing of our range of absorbent leak-proof products for periods, bladder leaks, and maternity. I'm the innovator of our technology that I began developing in 2013. The whole journey actually started on New Zealand ski slopes, where I was a ski racing coach for several years. I started with an idea of developing absorbent undergarments for elite athletes, because when you are on the ski slope, stuck at the starting gate, where there is 100 athletes waiting to go down the gates for their race and there are no bathrooms, you are in your tight race suit. It can be quite difficult and can create some interesting stories.
Yes, I guess so. You know, it's really interesting because I thought you were going to come on here to talk about absorbent underwear that the elderly use, or people who have recently had a surgery, or people who need it for bladder control. I didn't know we were going to be talking about elite athletes who need something like this.
It's not only elite athletes, but that's where the whole idea started. You know, even marathon runners who run 40 kilometers, they just can't stop for toilet breaks because they would lose the race. So that was the kind of the whole initial idea where it started. But since then, friends and family mentioned problems with bladder leakage and finding a solution for it. And so after extensive market research, we just realized that there was nothing in the market that didn't look utilitarian or didn't look like nappy. And I was horrified. And
Yeah, right.
And because of my textile technology background and fashion design, I thought I could help.
It's really fascinating. It's really interesting. I've never thought about needing a product like this because you want to make sure that it can't be noticed, right?
Exactly. So we knew from the very beginning to be able to create a product that looks like your regular underwear, we could not just rely on the market available textile technologies, and we had to create our own, which was probably the most challenging part of the whole process. But traditionally in the market, what you can see to stop leakage going through, there's a use of polyurethane layers. But they are plastics and they are not great for product shaping. You can't cut it and stitch it without a compromise on its performance, so it cannot be molded. When you're creating products with the aim of absorbing large amount of liquid, you need a reliable technology. And also, people need to be able to put it in the dryer. They can't just, hang it on the line because it will take forever to dry.
So it's actually reusable. You wash it and reuse it just like you do regular underwear.
Exactly. So they are fully washable, reusable, and leak-proof underwear products.
Wow. So I understand your inspiration, which is really fascinating. But how did you actually make it happen? How did you actually develop this product?
I spent about 9 months trying to develop the waterproof textile. So that was the biggest challenge at the very beginning. And I tried to do that from New Zealand, but quickly discovered that the Western world lacked the technology. So I decided to move to China, which was the obvious choice for me because of the high technological advancement and workforce and skilled workforce. So, and also I knew that our product will be quite demanding on a product construction, and I wanted to learn everything there is to know about production. So I spent weeks and weeks on a factory floor, stitching my samples on actual factory floor amongst all the factory workers so that I could get full understanding of all manufacturing processes. I would have so many factory staff just standing over me around the machines. They were chatting about over my shoulder, and of course I could not speak the language, but I think they must have been thinking, what the hell is this Westerner trying to do here? But they were quickly gobsmacked, because when they saw that I could draft my own patterns, I could cut, I could stitch, and use almost any type of the machines, they were quite surprised, because they are usually trained on a particular parts of production only. So I had a lot of time on the factory floors amongst all the staff, and it was incredible learning curve for me, because that was the only way for me to learn every single step of manufacture, of mass production.
I can imagine there were a lot of lessons to be learned. What surprised you the most about the process of manufacturing? And this was at another apparel company, right? Or another textile company?
Yes. So at the early stages, we developed a partnership with other factory, and we created kind of our own department under their umbrella. So that was working for a few years, but that was not sustainable for the future because of the demand on product development and quality control for our products. So we soon realized that we had to create our own factory.
So what are some lessons that you learned? All that time spent on the factory floor, what were you able to take with you to the next step, which was building your own manufacturing facility?
I think the biggest learning curve was how actually the whole production processes work. And so from really A to Z, and how each step is done, how quality control operates throughout the production floor, how do you monitor productivity, and how local staff, how much training you need to provide in order to get the result that you need.
Well, I'm sure, as you mentioned already, quality control is really important to your product because it can't leak. It just can't, right? So that was probably a big focus, right?
It was a huge focus, because one of our goals or our mottos really is consumer trust, because there are a lot of cowboys out in the market who overpromise and underdeliver on their product claims. And
of course,
the washable absorbent underwear category is relatively new and is still largely unregulated. So quality control is really, really important for us. And also being transparent and actually deliver on our claims. So, which is also why we are working closely with one of the largest consumer product testing laboratories, UL, in Boston and in Hong Kong, so that we can get our product performance verified. Because it's a relatively new category, UL actually had to develop new testing protocols that would kind of challenge our products to the real life scenario, because there are many factors affecting the performance, such as running, jumping, crossing legs, body weight pressure, construction, and many more. So they developed the new testing protocols to challenge our product and to really create testing scenarios so that they could really get the results as if somebody would wear the product.
I see. Is this product primarily for adults, or can you use it for babies? Can it be used for a baby diaper?
Yes, our technology has got wide range of applications, but our major focus is period and bladder leakage underwear, mostly adult.
Okay, that makes sense. once you got that experience on the manufacturing floor and you had your product and you knew that you could create it and manufacture it, then you built a facility, right?
We have. Yeah,
So
we
tell
plan.
me about the facility, because I understand it's very unique and special.
It is a little bit different. We like to call our factory the Apple of apparel.
Okay.
Yeah, because our products are incredibly challenging when it comes to product construction and quality control. We had to develop a lot of custom machinery in order to manufacture our products. And we strive on constantly trying to improve our technology. So we have, over the years, we have innovated several textile technologies, fully patented around the world. We are just not your typical apparel factory, because there's no factory that could do all the construction parts that our product demands, because we're dealing with waterproofing, we're dealing with actually stitching, cutting, stitching, sealing waterproof textile layers in order to make our underwear fully sealed and leak-proof. We have a lot of machinery that is not your typical machine setup in apparel factories.
Can you give us an example? What would a typical apparel factory use for a certain task that you use something different?
Yeah, most apparel factories would use traditional stitching machines. So, and they would have several types of machines for they're creating different kind of stitches, so that they can do most of that. But we do a lot of leak proofing, sealing. So we had a lot of custom built attachments and machines. Our production requires a lot of thinking outside of the box. Just to give you an example, we have this big machine that is about the size of a car, and it's probably about the weight of the car. It's about half a ton. And we're trying to mold some of our technology, and we were just not getting the result that we wanted, because it was kind of compressing the technology one way, but we needed to go the other way. So I said, well, why don't we just turn it upside down? So we got a big crane and we turned the whole machine upside down. So that was quite a process. We had to take a lot of parts apart and then put it back together. But then we discovered it actually worked, and we checked all the hydraulic all within the machines, and it was working just fine. So I think, for us, when somebody says you can't do that, I think that's the beginning of the conversation, not the end. And thinking outside of the box and doing things differently, and just not believing in the traditional way, and just change it as you need.
Right. Well, that's an interesting lesson for anyone in manufacturing, or really anyone in any field. It doesn't hurt to try it. You may as well try it. It might work, even if it
Absolutely.
sounds crazy. So that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a lot of crazy throughout our time.
Well, can you give us another example? Or do you have an example of something you tried that didn't work?
Well, we always had to kind of change ways and think, because every time we create a new product, or every time we design a new product, there are always challenges around how do we construct it. Yes, many times we had to change, but I think turning a half a ton machine was probably one of our craziest.
Yeah, that does sound pretty
parts,
crazy.
because everybody was just saying, no, you can't do that.
You showed them. That's awesome. I want to talk a little bit about the manufacturing market in Asia, because you mentioned that when you decided you wanted to build this factory for this truly unique and special product, that China was the perfect choice. Give us an idea why you chose Asia or China over New Zealand or somewhere in Europe or America, or why was that your obvious choice?
It was because the availability of technology, and also of skilled workforce. The Western worlds, or like Europe and USA, the manufacturing of apparel is not, and textiles is not readily available. So China was definitely the highest advanced country in terms of textiles development and apparel production. I think also in the early stages of manufacturing growth in Asia, there was quite large dependency on Western innovations, but I believe this is no longer the truth. I think innovation is a huge manufacturing trend in Asia, and they are no longer dependent on the outside world.
I would argue that innovation is a manufacturing trend worldwide. The entire world is trying to be more innovative, or at least they should be, to keep
up. It has
up.
to be, exactly. Yeah, the world is changing at incredible pace. So innovation, everything needs to be run by innovation and development.
Yes, I agree completely. Are there any interesting types of innovation that you have at the facility right now?
We always work on improving our technology. So we constantly focus on research and development, and always trying to create new textiles that are more forward, so that we stay always ahead of the game.
What are some of the other trends that you're seeing in manufacturing in Asia?
Sustainability is another one. And I think kind of like it's not necessarily a manufacturing trend, but the whole world is changing and sustainability is a big issue. And a lot of things are changing in Asia, not only China, the whole Asia, I think the whole world. Transparency in the supply chain, it's a big, big thing and it's changing. A lot of legislations are changing. And I think China is on a lot of them ahead of the game compared to other Asian countries.
Are you seeing anything that China market or the Asian market could be doing better than they are now?
There's always room for improvement. That's a good question.
I
So
guess
can
a different way to ask it might be, is there anything that's going on in Europe or the United States or other markets that the Asian manufacturing market can adopt and learn from? Or do you think Asia's just way ahead of the game?
I think Asia could be a way ahead of the game.
Okay,
But
interesting.
I can't comment fully globally because I don't have enough experience with European manufacturing, for example. I spent most of my life manufacturing in Asia.
Fair enough. That's fair. I appreciate you saying that because if you don't know, you shouldn't comment. So that's fair enough. First, let's set a timeline here. So, how long has your plant been in operation, and how long has it been since you developed this idea?
Okay, so I started working on the technology in 2013. We
Okay.
first launched our products in 2015, launched online. Since then, we had a major focus on a lot of development and trying to create textiles that are super absorbent and yet remain quite thin. So we spent years and years developing and improving our technology and patented all our technologies so that we can protect our intellectual property, but so we can create underwear that is incredibly slim yet absorbing large amounts of liquid. So, and in 2019, our major focus started to be a private label partnerships. So we partner with other companies, other brands, and large-scale retailers to incorporate our technology into their branded products.
From your perspective, it's been not even a decade really, but you're still immersed in manufacturing. So what do you think right now is missing in manufacturing worldwide, and how can we solve some of these problems in the future?
I think there are a few things. One is thinking outside of the box and being innovation driven. I see a lot of manufacturers rely on their traditional manufacturing ways. I mean, the way they are used to make products. So I would say constant development, investment in research and development can be seen lacking sometimes. I think one of the big issues at the moment is logistics and transport. So it's that's affecting manufacturers. At the moment, I think we need to find some more sustainable way to deliver goods because at the moment, the world is using passenger planes are being used for cargo and cartons are being strapped to a passenger seat. Whilst I think, this is great to utilize airplanes that are not in use due to the lack of travel because of COVID, but it puts a lot of pressure on manufacturers because cargo often arrives damaged because of that. I think relooking at logistics is definitely something that is missing, and it's also the demand on delivering goods has been increased, and so that's one way. Sustainability is definitely another one.
Right. What are some of the things that your company or your plant is doing that's sustainable?
Well, for us is that we don't use polyurethane layers, so we don't use plastics. We don't use a plastic membrane to make our product fully waterproof. Of course, there are always man-made fibers to make textiles absorbent. But I think where we differ, we're really focusing on trying to create products that can replace one-use products or to make the world better because, a lot of the one-use products, they take 500 years to biodegrade and it's not great for our environment.
Okay, good. It occurred to me, if someone came to you and said, I have this product that I want to manufacture and it's a really great idea, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know where to get started. What advice would you give them? Because you did this. You had this idea and then you created a product and then you built a facility. So what advice would you give to somebody else who wanted to do all those things, having learned so much along the way?
I think one is be bold, think outside of the box and be creative and never take no as the answer and do learn as much as you can.
I think also your experience of going into a manufacturing floor and sitting on the floor and working there is probably a great idea for anybody. Wouldn't you think?
Exactly. Yeah. I think don't be afraid, to travel, knock on people's doors, ask questions, challenge yourself, and really try to spend as much time studying any parts of the production and actually experience what is it like for every worker, to work at the factory.
I can't imagine better experience than that. If you want to get into it, you know what it's like. What better way to understand than to actually do it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's a big difference when you do it out of your small kind of like product development room where you can create your own samples, but then to apply it to mass production is quite something different.
I want to talk a little bit about the worldwide attitude with regard to manufacturing in China.
Yeah.
And we talked about maybe we could dispel some of the myths. What do you think are some of the misconceptions that people have about manufacturing in China?
As we talk about, I lived in southern China for several years, and I have seen dozens of factories and spent many weeks actually on the factory floor among all the staff so that I could learn all the processes. One thing I have never ever seen in China is, for example, is child labor. It is actually also illegal in China. So I think there's a lot of myths that are a little bit outdated around the world and in people's mind what is China manufacturing like and what the conditions are. I have never seen any issues. I think the conditions are great. People seem to be happy and never seen a child labor. I always see all factories constantly improving ethical manufacturing. So I think those are some of the myths that are slightly out of the date. But I can't comment on the country as a whole. But in the places in southern China where I have been and the amount of factories I have seen, I have never seen any mistreatment. I have never seen child labor.
I'm very happy to hear that, obviously. It's good to put that out there on the table and to dispel it. You hear so much about the mistreatment of human beings. And it's not just in China, it's in other places of the world too. And
Yes.
when I say mistreatment of human beings, also that includes, of course, children. That's good to know. And it's also nice to hear that the manufacturing has become more sustainable and more eco-conscious, and people are taking care of the environment. It's all good news. It's all good news for manufacturing.
Yeah, there's a lot of new environmental legislation, which is fantastic.
That's great. Are there any other misconceptions that maybe we have about manufacturing China that we should talk about?
I think the child labor I still hear from friends around the world is one of the biggies, but it's definitely illegal in China, and it's great because there's no exploitation that I have.
That's so good to hear. People get that in their mind. They hear it once, maybe decades ago, and they think it's still true now. So It's nice to know that it's not, and that there are regulations and that there are consequences if that does happen. We talk on this podcast every week about the future of manufacturing. It is called the Factory of the Future. From your perspective, what does the Factory of the Future look like to you?
As I mentioned before, sustainability is a big issue for global manufacturing. And I'm not talking Asia only. I'm talking the whole world. I think as a humankind, I think we need to look ahead and think carefully about our future. Fast fashion and price bargains driven products are not the sustainable way. We need to move away from the single-use products and support the environmental innovations. I believe all product developers and manufacturers who build their productions around sustainability and environment are the future of manufacturing. So I think constantly improving ways, looking at what are actually current traditional ways and see, can we change it? Can we make it better so that it's more sustainable?
It kind of goes back to your theme of thinking outside the box and how important that is to move forward.
It is incredibly important. And because the world is changing so fast, and I see so many people they get so used to their traditional ways of operation. And I think it's a bit detrimental to them. I think people need to, now is more than ever important to invest in innovation, in research and development, and to always try to improve the way we do things.
Wonderful. Good advice. This has really been an interesting conversation. It was not anything like what I expected, and in a good way. It was really fascinating and opened my eyes to a lot of things I did not know already. So I really appreciate you being here and enlightening us with all this cool information. I do want to give you a chance to have the last word. Is there anything else that you can tell us? What else would you like to say that maybe I wasn't smart enough to ask you?
I think kind of give a message to fellow manufacturers.
Sure. That'd be awesome.
I think I would say be inquisitive, be curious, be creative, never stop challenging yourself. Never cut budgets on research and development, and never stop innovating. That would be my core message to all fellow manufacturers, because that's the only way we're going to grow.
I think that's fantastic advice. Thanks so much for that.
Good.
I really,
Thank you,
really
Michelle.
appreciate it. And thanks again for being here. We really appreciate your expertise.
Thank you for having me. It was great to talking to you.
This brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on iTunes. If you have interesting information to share and want to contact me about being a guest on a future episode of this podcast, please send me an email at michelle@navigatecontent.com. You can also send me questions that I will have my expert guests answer for you on a future episode. And in the meantime, please check out my book series on modern manufacturing to read more than 30 real-world case studies about how global companies are using smart technology and innovation to build the factory of the future. All the links to the books and articles mentioned in this podcast are in the show notes. Have a great week, and please join me for the next episode of Factory of the Future.